It's Wednesday, May 28th. You're watching CBC News BC. I'm Vineet Brach here in the Vancouver newsroom, and here's what's happening this afternoon. With the hotter, drier season beginning, the BC Wildfire Service has announced open fire bans that will prohibit most burning activities in many coastal areas of BC. There are exceptions for Haida Gwaii. So the ban on Category 2 and Category 3 open fires in the Coastal Fire Centre comes into effect on Friday at noon. The service says the ban will remain in place until October 31st or until it's rescinded. Category 1 campfires that are no more than half a meter high and half a meter wide will still be allowed, as well as cooking stoves. And minimum wage in BC is going up again. So as of Sunday, it'll go from $17.40 to $17.85 an hour. The province says the 2.6% increase, it also applies to minimum wage rates for resident caretakers, live-in home support workers, live-in camp leaders, and app-based delivery and ride-hail service workers too. Now in February 2024, the government amended the Employment Standards Act so that annual increases to minimum rates happen automatically based on the previous year's average inflation rate for BC. New Westminster's Queen Park Arena is going to have one less flag hanging from its rafters. City Council has voted to remove a large American flag that has been there for decades. It all comes amid growing tensions with our neighbors to the south.
The more I looked into it, I realized that we simply don't have any American teams that are playing at the Queen's Park Arena anymore. Those days are long gone. So I just simply thought the time is now, given everything that's happening down south, as well as the fact that we don't have a City of New Westminster flag there, to take it down.
Fontaine says there's been a small group of people who have pushed back on the plan to remove it, and the American flag will be replaced by a municipal one. Bell has announced that it will open 6 artificial intelligence data centers in BC. It's part of a plan to create the largest AI compute project in Canada. So this all refers to technology that allows artificial intelligence systems to perform tasks like processing data, training machine learning models. One of them is slated to open next month in Kamloops. A second one is expected to open in Merritt by the end of this year. Also another one, a 26 megawatt center, is being built in partnership with Thompson Rivers University. It's expected to open up next year. The company says these centers are part of its plan to keep up with a growing demand from businesses and governments to use AI technology. In total, it says the facilities will provide around 500 megawatts of hydroelectric powered AI. And researchers at UBC are raising awareness about menstrual pain and providing a new resource to help young people identify when something's wrong. It's a new website called periodpain.ca. The website has information about potential symptoms that might not be normal. It's also got a quiz that gives you appropriate tips for your pain level.
Period pain is most intense during adolescence. And so we want young people to know that their pain is valid. For a lot of people, period pain impacts their ability to fully participate in day-to-day activities. And for a young person, that's a lot.
Khan says the website is for everyone who menstruates, but it's targeted at youth. And that's what we have for you to this afternoon. You're watching CBC News BC. We'll be back. BC Today is up next.
Good afternoon, and thanks so much for joining us. It's a hot day across much of the province, but finding relief from the heat can be difficult for many people in BC. We'll look at renewed calls for tenants to have greater access to air conditioners and have landlords need to make sure their buildings stay cool. And vaping continues to be on the rise, and while many see it as a safer alternative to cigarettes, there's still many health risks. So how do we make sure the younger generations don't get hooked on nicotine? I'm Amy Bell, in today for Michelle Elliott, and this is BC Today. Thanks for joining us on radio, TV, and on our live stream. You can call us now on our top story. How can we make sure all tenants have access to greater relief from the heat? Our number is 604-669-3733. You can also call 1-800-825-5950 or hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email us bctoday@cbc.ca. First, to another top story. MLAs are set to vote on the final phase of Bill 15 tonight. The controversial bill would give the provincial government the power to accelerate public infrastructure projects like schools and hospitals and provincially significant private resource projects like critical mineral mines. For more, we are joined by CBC reporter Katie DeRosa. Good afternoon, Katie. Hi, Katie. Can you hear me? Well, we seem to have a little bit of trouble getting through to Katie, so we will have to go to our next top story. Temperatures are higher than usual, and it feels like summer is fully here today. Environment Canada is warning of a day-long hot spell in much of BC, with temperatures between 5 and 12 degrees above normal for many areas of the province. And while some people might be enjoying the summer weather, one Canadian advocacy group is warning that many renters face additional challenges from extreme temperatures. What can we do to protect renters and tenants from the heat? And what's your experience with the extreme weather? Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. ACORN Canada is a national community-based group that advocates for low and moderate income people and families. And they're holding a national day of action today and have a new report out on the challenges tenants face during extreme weather. Joining me for more is Nichola Taylor. She is the chair of New Brunswick ACORN and Atlantic Canada's rep on ACORN's national board. Hello, Nichola. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
So ACORN representatives are rallying across the country today, including here in BC. So you've been kind enough to join us, from the other side of Canada. Can you tell me more about what people are rallying for today?
Yes, so we released a report today that basically shows that, as we all know, climate change is getting worse and many of us are affected by it. But tenants, especially low to moderate income tenants, are disproportionately affected by it because they tend to live in older buildings. The rent is slightly lower in these buildings, but they're not as well maintained, and they're not adequate enough with cooling systems or even heating systems in the winter to combat any kind of extreme weather that we may see. So we just want to get everyone to understand, especially the government, that more needs to be done to help people combat this.
And you do have a new report out called Crumbling Apartments in a Warming World. Can you tell me just a bit more about what you looked into?
So we surveyed our members across Canada, and we found that, many people are experiencing cold and drafty windows, lack of ventilation, inadequate heating winters, or too hot in summers, older appliances, and so on. And we also found that they're not getting these things maintained or replaced, and so they become very vulnerable to certain things, especially when it's too hot. We have many tenants, for example, who are on fixed incomes, such as seniors, and we all know very well that when we face extreme heat conditions, seniors are extremely vulnerable to this, and it's not just impacting everyday life, it impacts health as well. And we've seen across the country just how much people can be affected with their health because inadequate heating or cooling systems are not in their buildings.
And what are some of the issues that low and moderate income housing have faced in the past? We saw here in BC, we had an incredibly deadly heat dome, and that contributed to a great number of deaths, many of who were low and moderate income tenants. So what do we see right across Canada?
So out of everyone that we surveyed, all our members, only 23% reported access to air conditioning in their buildings in extreme heat, and that's across the country. So you can imagine how many tenants there are in Canada, how many are on low to moderate income, and we have over 188,000 members across the country, and yet only 23% of them reported that they have air conditionings in their buildings. So like you said, in such extreme weather cases like we saw in BC, many vulnerable people, whether they are seniors, whether they are people living with disabilities, maybe they have respiratory illness and so on, they are really at risk here if their building is not equipped with the correct equipment to help them cool down. And so we're calling on the government to do more here, but we also want that, we want these retrofits in the buildings. These benefit tenants, and we all know that. But if that cost is passed on to the tenants and then their rent is increased, like we have seen as well, without any tenant protections to stop that happening, we're also seeing massive displacement of tenants, which puts tenants at risk from another problem as well.
And when we look across the country, are there certain provinces or certain areas where we're seeing these challenges presented, in greater numbers, that we're seeing most vulnerable members of communities?
I would say it's mainly in obviously the bigger cities where they're more condensed, but we are also seeing it out in rural areas as well. So nowhere is left untouched really from this problem, and each area will have their own specific issues that they need to deal with and that they're trying to combat. But we are seeing, for example, in Ontario, there are many of our chapters that are fighting for beat the heat bylaws, where there is a maximum temperature put in place in order for people to have that cooling system in their apartment. We're facing now hotter summers, more humidity, and more people are at risk from becoming very ill or, as we sadly saw, dying.
All right, we do have a call that's come in, Nichola, so I do want to get to it. Neil in Nanaimo. Hi, Neil. How are you?
Good. How are you today?
I'm doing well. And what are your thoughts on so many people facing the inability to have cool accommodations across BC and across Canada?
Well, I'm going to say that I can't say much about who should get what, but I can tell you there's preventative medicine like that I grew up with in a hot area. Like people there commonly, if you're getting overheated, you run cold water on your wrists. If worse, get in a cold bathtub. And another thing is to keep your house closed during the day, blinds closed. Don't open up and let the outside heat in. Cool your house at night, and then keep that cool air in. Don't let the hot air come in. Don't open your house in the daytime. And even a cold washcloth on your forehead if you're overheated. I don't suffer. We didn't have air conditioning. That's what we did. No one really suffered that bad.
And I'm sorry, Neil, whereabouts did you grow up?
In southern Ontario.
Okay. All right. Well, I thank you for calling in. Hot
Right
and
inside.
humid. Yes. I thank you very much for sharing that with us. And we do have a call in as well, or call from Eric in Victoria. Eric, hi. I believe that you are also a landlord.
That's correct. I do have a couple of properties, and in them, some of them are low-income people.
Mm-hmm.
And getting a air conditioner or heat pump for those kind of properties can be very expensive. However, the BC government has been very, I got to say, great about getting those products to low-income people. I was able to get a heat pump free of charge to me for my tenant, who is a low-income tenant, because they worked with me and did the applications, and then we got a free heat pump. So now they live with a nice heat pump, throughout the year. And I think that's the proper way to go, because passing on the full cost to a landlord means that the landlord has to raise the prices. I mean, even though I've got a couple of properties, I bought them many years ago as a retirement buffer, and that's what they're for me. But they don't make a lot of money. They're just, I'm counting on the rise in property values to give me my retirement, because I don't have any kind of pension or anything like that. So the Clean BC program has been a godsend to us to help get that kind of relief for our tenants.
Okay. And Eric, have you found, I understand you worked with your tenant to get through the paperwork and everything to apply for this. Did you find it confusing at all? Was it fairly straightforward?
Well, it was difficult. In fact, the person who sold the heat pump to us did more work with the tenant than I did, because we don't live in the same town. The hurdles for the tenant to attain that were fairly significant. This is, I'm sure lots of people do not have this problem, but this particular tenant had to get his taxes done and that sort of stuff to prove his eligibility for the program. And in a lot of people, that can be a stumbling block, or they don't want to do it. And if you don't have a good relationship with them, they don't want to do it either. So there's a few hurdles that could be worked out a little bit easier, but I think it's the best way to go. Like I say, trying to pass on the full increase of cost to a landlord who already doesn't make money doing this, and all the additional taxes and the increases that go along with being a landlord. Most landlords don't make much money from the rentals, but it becomes a hedge for retirement.
All right. Well, thank you for that perspective, Eric. Much appreciated. And Nichola, what do you hear from landlords? Eric is wanting to get these heat pumps and ACs, and has been working with his tenants. That's not always the case. And unfortunately, for many, they don't have somebody like Eric that can advocate for them. What do you hear from landlords that you're asking to provide a basic need, a safe and cool place?
I agree with you there, and I also agree with Eric. Like the system that you have in BC, where the government are offering the air conditioners to certain people, that's a very good program. And actually, what we're asking for when it comes to that in BC is that the province needs to expand that program in order and have broader eligibility criteria so that more people qualify. As to your question, sadly, not everyone is like Eric, who's a landlord, and sadly, not all landlords are willing to install ACs, and it could be for a variety of reasons. Of course, they usually quote the costs and everything, but also, we need the government. That's where we need the government to step in to be able to offer these kind of energy efficiency programs, because again, both landlord and tenant will benefit if their houses are efficient, energy efficient, or apartments are energy efficient. They will both benefit. But what we're calling for and what we're asking Canada-wide, not obviously just in BC, is that those additional costs are not passed on to the tenant. And that's where the government has to step in and make sure that doesn't happen. And, because sadly, most landlords are not like Eric, and most landlords will not do that.
Okay. We have another call that's come in from Roseanne. Hi, Roseanne. Thanks for joining us. Hi. What are your thoughts on today's topic?
Well, I just wanted to call in because of that gentleman who called in and said about putting water on people's foreheads, wrists, putting them in a bath. When it's already humid and people are sweating and there's nowhere for that fluid to go, adding more fluid, especially with seniors, which I used to work with, is extremely dangerous. You're just adding more warm water to their skin.
Yes.
It's going nowhere. It's keeping them hotter. You could kill them.
I appreciate you making that point, Roseanne, and also to that point, we do know that in so many areas it is seniors that are in these spots of low income or moderate incomes and desperately need a way effectively to stay cool. We've got time for one more call from David in Nanaimo. Hi, David.
Hi there. Yeah, thanks for the call. So I fully think we need to be looking at tree equity as well. We need to be thinking about people who are especially vulnerable populations. When we look at their neighborhoods, sometimes the tree equity can be 8%, as in Strathcona and Vancouver, versus Shaughnessy, which has close to 40. Those shady neighborhoods are so much cooler, and we need to be working with nature as well as working with indoor solutions.
Yes, I agree, and I know that we are working on plans here in Vancouver to increase that shade equity and hopefully across the country. Nichola, I really appreciate you being with us today, but just before I let you go, what do we need to see more across Canada in terms of having these regulations so that it is equitable no matter where you're living?
So we need energy efficient and mechanical cooling requirements in all projects, no matter where in Canada you are. And we also need mandatory building performance standards with tenant protections, because like I said earlier, this is another problem that we're worried about, is that if these retrofits are included in the building, landlords will pass those costs on to tenants, increasing their rents and forcing them out. And that's not what we want to see. We need energy poverty programs to be expanded nationwide and mandate tenant protections in all green retrofit funding, which is what I've spoke a lot about, which means affordability and anti-eviction covenants, formal tenant participation in retrofit plans. Tenants should be part of that. Eric said that he discussed with his tenant, that's what all landlords should be doing. And signed community benefit agreements involving tenants, landlords and funders, as well as proof of benefit. So landlords must demonstrate that retrofits tangibly help tenants financially or make the unit healthier to live in. We don't want to be seeing what happened in 2021 in BC happen again, because these buildings are just not adequate enough to help people when it comes to very hot summers that, you guys in BC witnessed.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us today, Nichola. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Nichola Taylor is chair of New Brunswick ACORN and Atlantic Canada's rep on ACORN's national board. It is 12:24, and this is BC Today. And yes, of course, with the temperatures higher than usual, you will be feeling the heat, and you may or may not seek some relief among the tree cover. In Vancouver, there is a new goal to increase the urban tree canopy cover by increasing it 30% over the next 25 years. This goal is going to run into challenges posed by development and climate change. There's also ongoing inequity issues around tree distribution in the city. Joe McLeod, Vancouver's Associate Director of Parks, explained on the Early Edition this morning.
This strategy, the impetus really is to look at protecting the trees that we do have and also maintaining the trees that we do have. That's the real priority. Additionally, we do need to plant more trees. That's always going to be a priority. We remove approximately 2,000 trees each year. from the city just from old age, pests, climate change. So there's constant tree planting that needs to happen.
And is there a real disparity between the east side and the west side of the city, as is, I guess what people tend to think?
Yeah, there's a significant disparity, and you can see in the western neighborhoods, there's canopy covers that exceed 30%.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the lowest canopy cover neighborhood in the city is actually Strathcona, which is approximately 9%. And part of it is that area is obviously a lot of light industrial use in Strathcona, but there is also smaller properties in the eastern neighborhoods. And historically, there was also some cultural, preferences to not necessarily plant trees and provide more area for kind of on-property agriculture.
And MLAs are set to vote on the final phase of Bill 15 tonight. The controversial bill would give the provincial government the power to accelerate public infrastructure projects like schools and hospitals and provincially significant private resource projects like critical mineral mines. And for more on this, we are now joined by CBC reporter Katie DeRosa. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Amy. I'm here now.
Sorry about that earlier. So there has been a lot of pushback to Bill 15, especially from First Nations. What are their biggest concerns with the bill?
Well, the big problem for the NDP government is the lack of consultation with Indigenous groups leading up to introducing the bill earlier this month. Premier David Eby and Bowen Ma, Infrastructure Minister, both admitted they didn't do the level of consultation that's required under the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. And so the concerns that we heard this week, as well as last week from First Nations groups, is that this bill essentially provides carte blanche, they say, to the government to pick and choose projects, fast track them, and they're worried about steamrolling over Indigenous rights, steamrolling over environmental protections, and local governments as well. The UBC, Union of BC Municipalities, have added their voice to the opposition, saying the government could leapfrog over local governments as well. So a lot of opposition to this. However, Premier David Eby has repeatedly said he stands behind the bill. He says communities are asking for this. They're asking for ways to get local hospitals built, schools built, private projects built that will, accelerate the economy. And, he cited the example, parents don't want to wait 2 more years to see a school built because of, say, an environmental assessment hold up.
Right. And of course, earlier this week, Premier Eby unveiled his plans to speed up mining development in northwestern BC to boost the provincial economy. I'm curious how Bill 15 would factor into those plans.
Well, that was a question put to Eby, by myself at that press conference. I said, a key part of Bill 15 when it was announced was the ability to deem certain projects as provincially significant, including critical mineral mines. So, I asked, is Bill 15 connected to this mining push? Eby insisted that they're separate, but that raised a lot of eyebrows as to whether that's accurate. But I will note as well, the BC Chamber of Commerce came out today saying that they have concerns about Bill 15 and that they're concerned that projects that are deemed provincially significant could therefore be at higher risk of legal challenge. So some of those mines that Premier Eby wants to fast track could be mired in legal challenges. So the business community is saying that Bill 15 could actually provide more uncertainty as opposed to the certainty that Premier David Eby insists will happen.
So what could happen to tonight's vote? What could that mean for Bill 15?
Well, the NDP have a bare majority with a one seat majority. It's likely that they'll need the speaker to break the tie. However, the 3 independents that left the BC Conservative Caucus have so far abstained. We asked them at an unrelated press conference if they're going to show up and vote yay or nay. They didn't say if they will. So if those 3 independents don't show up, then that the NDP has a clear majority on this bill. But what we will be watching for is protests or legal action if the bill does pass, which the First Nations Leadership Council has promised to do.
We will stand by for more after tonight's vote. Thank you so much. Glad we could finally connect with you, Katie.
Thank you.
That is CBC reporter Katie DeRosa. It is 12:30, and that means it is time for the 12:30 CBC Local News with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. BC's minimum wage is going up 40 cents on Sunday to $17.85 an hour. That's a 2.6% increase. The ministry says the increase also applies to resident caretakers, live-in home support workers, and app-based delivery and ride-hailing service workers. Most types of open fires are being banned in BC coastal areas, excluding Haida Gwaii, starting Friday. The BC Wildfire Service says the ban on Category 2 and 3 open fires in the Coastal Fire Centre will remain in place until October 31st or until it's rescinded. It says campfires up to half a meter high by half a meter wide will still be allowed, as well as cooking stoves. And we may see a few temperature records broken today as we shift into a short day-long hot spell. Meteorologists say a short-lived ridge of high pressure is in place over most of the province. That will bring temperatures between 5 and 12 degrees above normal. And now taking a look at the forecast on the north coast, rain this afternoon with strong winds and a high of 12, highs up to 32 with a mix of sun and cloud in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, some sun and cloud with a high of 28, highs to 32 with sunshine in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, sunny with a high of 30. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria and the Fraser Valley, lots of sunshine this afternoon, with highs up to 29 inland. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you, Rob. Any plans for beating the heat? It gets pretty hot on the tennis court.
I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt, Amy. That was my one and only plan.
That was a bold choice, my friend.
I thought it was a good one.
I like
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you, Rob. And lots more on the day's top stories on the afternoon shows in your region. Here in Metro Vancouver, this is what's coming up on the coast.
Hi there, Amy. It's Gloria Macarenko here, and I hope you can join us for On the Coast this afternoon. You know, we've got lots of stories lined up already. For example, New Westminster City Council voted unanimously to remove the U.S. flag from Queen's Park Arena. So we're going to hear more about why from the councillor who introduced that motion. We'll also hear from Conservative MLA Judy Tour about her motion to offer more perinatal mental health supports for BC women. We'll hear about her reasons behind this bill. So join us for those conversations and more between 3 and 6 this afternoon on the Coast.
Gloria, thank you. You can hear On the Coast on CBC Radio 1 here in Metro Vancouver and anywhere on the CBC News app. And while smoking is generally looked down upon, the rise in vaping continues, especially among young adults. According to recent data, a third of young Canadians aged 15 to 24 have used a nicotine vape product. And while fruity scented clouds may seem harmless, there are still many risks associated with vaping. Our BC Today intern, Huma Javid, asked people in downtown Vancouver why they vape, and here's what some of you had to say.
I'm in downtown Vancouver, and there are vape shops everywhere. It's a common sight to see young people using vape like this, the one I'm holding in my hands. Mind you, I borrowed this device as a prop. I don't vape. So, according to Statistics Canada, nearly half of young adults vape at some point in their life. So I went around and asked people in downtown Vancouver why they vape.
Before I smoked cigarettes, but I'm starting actually to end my smoking journey. That's why I'm transferring to vaping. I tried to stop like a week and then go back again. Because sometimes if you're stressed, you're just looking for something to sip. So that's why I'm trying to end it, but I'm still going back to vaping.
Yeah, I think I definitely prefer it over cigarettes because it doesn't leave a smell. That's pretty nice. I don't like the smell of cigarettes. So because of that, I like it. Plus, it's very convenient. We don't have to go out to like vape, you know?
For example, that hurt more my lung when I smoke cigarettes. I feel it less when I smoke vape. But maybe that's just a feel. I don't know what's happened in my body. So.
How do you make your own vape? I'm just curious because.
But in French, you can buy like the base. You buy the base, and after you buy like all the flavor, all the taste, and you mix it. You also put some nicotine if you want.
I like to vape because I like the flavors, and it's convenient for smoking inside. But I recently just like went back to smoking because of the health benefits. Like not benefits, but it's not as bad as vaping in my opinion. I found that when I vape, my breathing was really wheezy, and I didn't like that. I couldn't jog as much as I could when I smoked, so I've gone back to cigarettes.
Over cigarette, yeah, because I think cigarettes are so strong lately, so I rather switch to vape than smoke.
So we want to hear from you. Why do you vape? And how can we stop teens and young adults from vaping? Call us now at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email us your thoughts, bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining us now is Christopher Lamb, the president and CEO of BC Lung Association. Chris is an experienced health advocate and has spent the last decade addressing smoking and vaping cessation. Christopher, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me here, and thanks for covering a really important topic.
It is a really important topic, and I think that short clip of people illustrated a large point, and that is the amount of sort of confusion around vaping. It's very prevalent. Many people consider it to be healthier than smoking. Some seem to be aware of the damage, some aren't. It's so popular, but it's still so misunderstood, the effects on the body. So how do we work with that in terms of getting people off vapes?
What a great clip that really was.
Incredible, yeah.
In such a small period of time, you were really able to capture that type of confusion that exists. And you heard everything in that clip, everything from they can make their own vape juice to it's better than smoking, it's worse than smoking. It was all in there, and we are hearing all sorts of those things. And where we're really concerned is that we're hearing those things not just from adult populations, but from our kids. And that is a significant thing that we have to take care of here in our province.
Well, and I am the mother of 2 teens. And do you have children as well?
I have a little guy who's turning 7 next week, and it's around him. So we are trying to figure that out,
and
even as parents.
What's scary. And I can't imagine at any point in my parenting journey that I would have walked by an elementary or a high school and not been shocked to see people smoking cigarettes. But the amount that I see vaping on school grounds is eyebrow raising and disconcerting.
It is astounding. The number of parents that we've heard from, school administrators, school principals, teachers, who have commented that they have seen their children be afraid to go to bathrooms in their own
Exactly,
schools.
because of it.
That is a concern, and that's something that we really have to address because it is so prevalent in our school system. And we aren't doing justice to the schools. We're not being fair to them on how to get a hold of this and get a handle on how we're going to stay ahead of what's going to be a really big problem for us health-wise.
Well, and I want to speak to you about that is that as that clip showed, and just from speaking to a lot of people, there is that misconception that vaping is somehow not necessarily healthy, but healthier than smoking, that it won't cause any long-term damage, but that is not the case. And we're finding out more and more. So when we look at the health impacts of vaping, what are we seeing? And especially in the younger generations.
The health impact is astounding. And you're absolutely right. The research is still relatively new, but we are now at a point where we are seeing that data come in. And it is not good in terms of the long-term health outcomes for people who vape. I think it's really important to point out, too, that there is no safe age to start vaping or smoking. Here in our province, we do have a minimum age. Right across Canada, there is a minimum age. We have a lot of laws and restrictions that are in place. However, we have to make it very clear, especially as parents to our kids and educators to our kids, there is no safe age to start something like that. And collectively, we should do more to do exactly that.
And we talk about the health impacts. What are things that we would see, perhaps in somebody that started at a younger age and was vaping nicotine, or what are we now seeing in people that have vaped for quite some time?
There's multiple factors to consider. And the number one factor that we should be looking at is the nicotine content.
Right.
So especially when it comes to our kids and our youth, when we know that those brains are still developing, we know scientifically the brain doesn't really fully develop until about the age 25. And we're seeing kids as young as 10 start vaping and ingesting that nicotine. We're talking about significant impacts, particularly cognitively. We're talking about memory loss, attitude, attention deficit. We're talking about all sorts of things that really are going to impair these children, where really they're going to be playing catch up for the rest of their lives. And I think a lot of us know, especially as parents, that's not our role as parents to put our kids behind.
No.
We want them to be ahead. We want as a society for our kids to be ahead. And vaping is a surefire way to put them behind.
We do have a call that's come in from David in Nanaimo. Hi, David. Do you have any thoughts on vaping culture?
Yeah, I was responding to your question. What we could do to reduce the younger people starting to vape, and I think one of the things is some kind of regulation that gets rid of these flavors. It seems to me that the vaping was designed initially to help people stop smoking, which is a great idea, but as soon as companies started putting in flavors that are kind of sweet, they're basically attractive to kids. Like I was telling the woman who picked up the phone, I was a teacher for 38 years, and I saw a huge switch from tobacco to vaping. And the kids all, I could smell it as soon as I walked, wherever it was happening, you could smell it. And it's these sweet flavors that the kids were not vaping plain old water and nicotine,
And David, in terms of what you've seen in the schools, is there anything that teachers are trying to do? Is there any pushback from administration? How are they handling it? As Christopher and I were saying off the top, we hear from a lot of students that they're upset about the amount of vaping that goes on in the washrooms. Is there anything that teachers are able to do to sort of combat this?
Well, I mean, short of walking into the bathroom, though, the washroom every 15 minutes, not really. I mean, even the administration, there's such a myriad of things that teachers and administrators are required to do by the ministry and by the school district. And, every single teacher that I know and have known over the years has discouraged smoking, vaping, whatever. But as you know, I heard you say you have 2 kids.
Yeah.
There's things you can control and things you can't.
Absolutely.
And the best we can do is tell them, to the best of our ability about the risks of doing these kinds of things.
Yeah.
But we're never gonna be able to stop them. And the companies who sell the stuff don't care if it's a 10-year-old or a 50-year-old buying their product. They just care about the product. I mean, let's be realistic. They're in business to make money.
Yeah.
They're not in business to do anything else.
No.
So that then falls upon our regulators to say you can't sell that stuff. You know, obviously they say you can't sell it to kids under 19, but so what? They're obviously getting it all over the place.
Exactly.
And the companies who make it are making it attractive to kids because they are the market.
Right.
Those kids get addicted. They're addicted for the next 50, 60 years. That's, you know, I mean, Big Tobacco did it and played down the harms of tobacco for decades. And it wasn't until, you know, the litigation made them admit that it was bad. It's the same players here.
Yeah, no, and we do have to keep that in mind. Cigarettes were once considered healthy and helpful to so many people. David, before I let you go, I just want to ask, in your opinion, you know, you saw the switch from smoking to vaping. Do you think more students are vaping than they were smoking?
I don't know. I couldn't say with any, my gut says yes, but I couldn't say with any reasonable certainty.
All right. Thank you so much. That's such great insight, and I really appreciate that. And Christopher, you were nodding to so many of his points, and one of them being that these vapes with their cotton candy scents and flavors, they almost seem like they're specifically targeting younger people.
Without a doubt. And I want to thank David as well. That was a fantastic call from the perspective of an educator.
Yes.
He's bang on. The flavors are such a big part of what we're talking about, especially when it connects to our kids. You know, the Big Tobacco has released flavors, like you said, cotton candy, birthday cake, you know, fuzzy peach. They're not trying to attract adults with those flavors. Let's be very perfectly clear about that. They're targeting our kids, and they're being very successful with it. It's candy to them. The scents smell so good. We've done a number of studies where we've also seen kids tell us it is about the flavors. It's the fact that their friends are doing it as well. They don't realize what's in them, what types of chemicals are in them, and how addictive that nicotine content really is. I couldn't agree more that we have to do more on the regulation front. We have to do better by our educators and the parents to help them keep this out of the system, because it's overburdened as it is. Our healthcare system is going to be overburdened as it is. So I think it's incumbent on us to do a little bit more now to prevent it down the line.
We'd love to have more callers in. David, of course, was incredible, but welcome everyone to the program. Call 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733. Just want to hear your thoughts on, you know, how we can stop people from starting vaping, especially younger people. But if you are somebody who vapes, we want to know your experience with it and whether you do want to quit. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Our guest today, Christopher Lamb from the BC Lung Association. We were talking about how there needs to be more regulation. How does it look across the country, and then how does BC compare to that?
That's a great question. You know, here in British Columbia, we should be quite proud of where we are. We live in a healthy environment. We live where physical activity is revered. We generally have clean air outside of wildfire season, and generally health is held paramount here. We have among the best smoking rates, not just in Canada, but around the world. But that also means that we are kind of stuck in a place where the national average is somewhere around 12, 13%. Here in British Columbia, we're down to about 8.5%, 9%. But it's kind of been stagnant there for a little while. So we have a little ways to go. And now with the rise of vaping, there's more to be done, because that number is starting to creep a little bit higher when it comes to our kids. You know, and that's where the regulations really need to be in place around should we be lifting that minimum age to something a little higher? It is different across the country. So here in British Columbia, it is 19. In parts of the country, it is 21. Is 21 the right number? I mentioned earlier that the developing brain goes until about 25. I know, is that a different number? Or are we talking about, should we be eliminating something like this altogether?
Right.
Now, the BC Lung Foundation has been advocating for quite some time adopting a smoke-free generation policy, something that our provincial government has started to look into, so we're grateful for that. And the general concept there is that the minimum age rises every single year for eternity. So what that would mean is right now it's 19. Next year, if it were to go into effect, It would go to 20, year after that, 21, until an entire generation of our kids
Has never had access.
they will never have access. And this is the key salient point. We have to remove access from our kids. For the people who are currently using it now, whether it's for addiction reasons, they're trying to quit smoking and tobacco use, if they are legally able to do it now, they will continue to be legally able to do so. We are solely focused right now on what it's doing to our kids and creating an entire generation to be smoke-free. That would probably be the biggest public health victory of the 21st century. The upstream cost for us as taxpayers would be enormous.
But to that point, regardless of what the age is right now, it's 19, but as you and I have said, far younger than 19 is accessing vapes. So how much does that affect who has access to it? We could raise it to 30, but does that mean that a 12-year-old still won't have access to it somehow?
It's a great question. It really has to do with access and creating those outlets and areas in which that gets done.
Okay.
So right now, the biggest question often is, well, how is my 12-year-old getting their hands on a vape? Often the answer is it's a hand-me-down. Yeah. It's coming from the older brother, the older sister, the cool uncle, the cool aunt. That we want to start removing. And we know that the entry point often for tobacco use is right around the 18, 19, 20-year-old mark. You know, there aren't many people who start that type of behavior when they're 30, 31, 32.
Not at all.
In fact, it's very common for us to know, especially as our developing brains have become fully developed, we know that that is unsafe behavior. Like we said off the top, there is no safe age to be starting this type of thing.
No.
So now if you remove that access and you remove that ability to do so, I think you create a healthy environment. And I want to make it very clear, something like this isn't intended to be prohibition. It's not taking the rights away from people. It's simply creating healthy environments for our kids and protecting them as we should be as a society.
Fabulous points, and I'm glad that we addressed that. But we have a call in from Mark in Vancouver, and Mark, I do believe that you have been vaping for quite some time.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Of course, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been vaping for over 18 years, so pretty much since vapes were available, I wanted to get off cigarettes as much as possible, and so I started with some pretty bad products that were on the market originally, and those products have evolved over time to the point where I'm quite satisfied with where I am. I've been really open with my doctor over the years and wanting to get as much health information as I could. I wanted to do all the tests on my lungs and my blood work, all of that, just to find out if there was any effect that I was feeling, because all the effects that I was feeling coming from cigarettes were positive. I was able to breathe easier. I no longer had wheezing. I could run and jog, and I to this day, I feel very little effect. The only actual effect that I feel is dehydration. So I've managed to figure out how much water intake my body needs to account for the propylene glycol coming into my system. But I've been kind of aware of what's going on, not just here in Canada, but around the world, with the British government claiming that vaping is 98% safer than smoking. I think that message needs to get out there for smokers. I think it needs, especially for that caller the interview that you had on the street saying that they went back to smoking because they thought that was safer. Right. I think that is exactly the misinformation that needs to be also up there, as well as trying to keep it away from teens. I'm obviously not in favor of, I have a kid, I don't want that child vaping. The only reason that you should be vaping is if you need to get out of cigarettes. And that's what I did. And I want to have the ability to do that. I don't want to be limited in flavors. Those flavors aren't for kids or just for kids. They're for us wanting to stay with the product that we can enjoy and actually get some satisfaction from outside of the realm of smoking cigarettes.
And you've been smoking or you've been vaping for a very long time. Many people go to vapes as a short-term solution to get off cigarettes. Do you have any plans or hopes to one day completely quit vaping as well?
You know what? I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibilities, but for me right now, I see no negative health effects My lungs are completely clear. They have cleared over the last 18 years. My blood work has just come back. As I said, I'm 52. I'm really aware of all these, health things that are going on with me and the stuff that I need to be in check with. All of them are regular, normal levels, and I vape a lot. I'm not a casual vapor. I'm a pretty constant vapor. So, I want people to also have that message, especially adults, that if they are smoking, that this is a viable method to quit. It was absolutely successful for me. I've never gone back to cigarettes. Wouldn't even dream of it.
Well, that's good.
It would just detest me.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate that perspective. Thank you for that.
I do have a question for your guest there.
Yep.
They said that there were a lot of negative health effects. They said as the data was coming in, we've seen more and more negative health effects. I'd love to hear those. What are those in your opinion, and what studies are you quoting?
That's a great question. And first, Mark, I want to congratulate you on being able to quit tobacco. I mean, that is a success story in itself, something that's really hard to do. So congratulations. That is a fantastic story. I'm also really grateful that you've had such successful health outcomes. I mean, this is something that should be celebrated. I think we all know that when vapor products were created, they were built as smoking cessation tools. And there is, I'm not here to debate whether or not that's true or not. I'm really here to talk about the science behind it, and I'm really here to help people understand that that is an option. There are other options as well. And I think the most salient point is the one I think we actually agree on, because you said it yourself. Our whole goal is that people shouldn't start in the first place. So if you are a current user, just as I had mentioned in the smoke-free generation policy, if you currently are using it as a cessation tool, if you are a current legal user of it, that right should never be taken away from you. In fact, the fact that you've seen success should give people a lot of hope. We want people to quit tobacco. We don't want people to go back to smoking. The truth of the matter is people are, and there's a percentage of people that do. So we need to have a variety of different options for people to be able to quit. The province, for example, sponsors one that is run by the BC Lung Foundation called Quit Now. And it's a fairly robust cessation program, and kids are eligible to use that as well. So that's an important tool to have. Now, in terms of the health effects, we've seen all sorts that have been documented well in accredited journals, right down to something that what happens is with the inhalation of the different chemicals that are in the product. And this is where the nuance is. It has to do with the regulations around what's in the vapor product itself. So in your case, Mark, and I can't say what exactly your situation has been, there are various vapor chemicals that are more harmful than others. In fact, a great number of studies have proven that it will target the smallest airways in your body and cause them to constrict. So what that happens is it does create that breathing difficulty, and sometimes those things are irreversible. There's a certain flavor out there. It is cherry. The cherry flavor that many people know has a chemical content in it that actually erodes that lining that's in your lungs. So what that does is once that lining gets eroded...
Christopher, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we are right out of time. Yes. But it was so wonderful to have you with us and so informative. So thank you. And that, unfortunately, is all the time that we do have today.